So yesterday, Donald Trump's legal team held a news conference. I'm sure everybody is aware of that. Most of you have probably watched it. It was to discuss allegations of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Now, this is obviously a newsworthy event, right? Even if this news conference were as crazy as the mainstream media would have you believe it was, right? It's been described as bizarre, freewheeling, and Exelon did call it crazy.
Wild.
That's what the established media wants you to believe because they don't think you're going to watch it.
Side note, I've read the word freewheeling to describe either a Trump press conference or a Trump campaign press conference at least 50 times in the past year. Because that is the only... They need to find a new word to describe it. We understand that it was kind of, all over the place.
Yeah.
Find a new word. Freewheeling, we're done. No more freewheeling.
And don't use it in this case because this was just a press conference. If you've ever watched a press conference that has more than one speaker, there's generally a little disorganization. There's, people got to figure, who's talking next, whatever. There was a little of that. But there, nobody was running around with their hair on fire. I mean, it was the mainstream media wants you to believe that this was just like a circus, when there were elephants and clowns and dancing girls, and it was some lawyers talking. That's what it was.
And a minor hair dye issue.
Minor, very minor.
There was nothing crazy about it. All of which is kind of my rant for the day, and secondary to really what my anger is about this issue. The Trump legal team had to do a news conference because the allegations that they were making, and they didn't tell me this, this is my surmise, but I believe it to be true. The allegations they're making aren't being covered by the established media. They're being censored on Twitter, on Facebook. Whether they are true or not is almost a secondary issue. When you have personal counselors, I mean, it matters whether they're true or not, of course. But when you have personal counselors to the President of the United States making allegations, that's news, right? Whether they can prove it or not is a secondary issue. It's an important issue, but it has nothing to do with the newsworthiness of it. If Donald Trump stands in front of a microphone and lies his head off for 20 minutes, that's still news. So Facebook doesn't want to count that as news. However, Facebook does not want you to see a news conference done by the president's legal team. We know that because they censor this material anyway. But here's what they did yesterday that really got under my skin. The Western Journal decided to carry this news conference live. We just put it live on our Facebook page and ran it, just like watching a live news report or whatever. Facebook, one of Facebook's fact checkers, then puts this flag on it, the partly false fact check flag on it, which is, first, it's ridiculous on the face of it. Now, the point of running the news conference, the point of us running the news conference was not to say everything these people are saying is gospel truth. It's to say, this is what these people are saying. That's newsworthy because these are newsmakers. These are newsworthy people. Did they, in fact, say these things? Yes. Here's the video of them saying it. It's live. They're saying it right now. So I can understand a fact checker wanting to fact check Rudy Giuliani. If he says something that they don't believe is true and they want to correct that, okay, that's a legitimate thing to do. Or, any of the speakers that were there. But for them to fact check the Western Journal for bringing news to our readers is absolutely...
As a news site.
As a news site, right, which is kind of what we're here to do. That's ridiculous. What's more ridiculous is they put this tag on it, and then when a fact checker does that on Facebook, they'll put a link that you'll see the CY button there. You can click on that and it'll take you to an article about the fact check. Well, the article this button takes you to is 2 months old. It has nothing to do with this video at all. Unless it were written by a psychic, there's no way it could have anything to do with this video. It was so bizarre. So this morning I reached, and that showed up yesterday, and I ignored it. I'm like, this has got to be some stupid mistake. It's ridiculous on the face of it. I'm just going to ignore it and hopefully it'll go away. Because sometimes it does. Facebook has glitches like any other technology. That's not what happened. I came in this morning. It was still there. So I emailed Facebook and I said, how can the Western Journal be penalized for statements, even if they are untrue, that we had no way of knowing were going to be made during a live video?
Yeah.
How can you penalize us for that? Facebook sent me no response to that email. That is not very surprising. That's the typical response I get when Facebook realizes that it has made an error. But shortly after I sent that email, the partly false label has been removed. So you can go back. If you haven't seen this news conference, you can go to Western Journal's page and you can play it and you won't get that tag anymore. But that's a screenshot that we just put up there so you can see what it looked like when it was still up there. So look, what the Western Journal wants to do, what I want to do, what these two people sitting next to me want to do, we have a whole newsroom full of people who want to do it, is bring you truth as best we understand it. That's what we are here for. Our motto is equipping readers with the truth. Readers being viewers or listeners, obviously, on a podcast, but Western Journal's motto is equipping readers with the truth. Truth is foundational to what we do.
It is one of our thingies.
It is one of our thingies, as we say in the newsroom. We don't do that perfectly. We do it pretty well. And when our failures are pointed out to us, we are quick to correct them. And we appreciate when they're pointed out so that we can correct them because truth matters to us. That is not enough to appease the big tech tyrants at Facebook, apparently. Nope. So here's my question for you guys to start with. What would be enough to appease the big tech tyrants at Facebook?
I think if we were to suddenly say, you know what, we're not conservative anymore, we like Biden, I think then it would be enough for them to say, yeah, they're posting a live video, let's let them play it. I don't think there's any way that conservative news outlets right now are going to get a pass for simply reporting the news just because of the way that the narrative that has been set in mass media and the narrative that has been set by these big tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, Google. I just don't think there's any way.
So if you think MSNBC, if they ran this video on their Facebook page, would have gotten away with it?
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't have had a fact check on that.
I disagree, though. I think it's the other way around. It's the fact that MSNBC did not run it makes Facebook say, when the Western Journal or sites like us run it, that makes them say, well, MSNBC, who we trust, or NBC or CBS or whatever, isn't running it. That makes it false.
That's why we have to run it, because these are news makers. These are people who have the president's ear. I don't know that Donald Trump has a closer counselor than Rudy Giuliani. He may, but I'm not aware of one. He's certainly very much in Trump's inner circle.
At least one who's been there for as long.
Yeah,
as,
and they've known each other for forever. Both New Yorkers. So this is news. This is newsworthy. Again, whether they're just making stuff up, I don't care if they're up there, coloring in coloring books. They're newsmakers. That matters.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for, I am a libertarian, as you know. I
had not noticed.
I'm not one for regulating social media companies. That being said, you look at Facebook and you look at Twitter, you look at all these people, and it is clear that they have a left-wing bias. I think they should be allowed if they want, but that is quite clear. I think it's super, super important to note, right? If you watched Rudy Giuliani's press conference, I watched it. I did not love parts of it. There was probably some points he made and some points that I said, I don't necessarily agree with this. The point, as you said, is not, well, we're going to censor this because we don't like it or because it's not true, some of the things he said may not have been true. I'm just going to say that. They may not have been true.
Or at least they may not have been substantiated. He didn't prove their truth there.
Not substantiated. If you want people to believe that you are a platform for news, that you are a place where people can go and interact with other people, where you can be a community, a platform, and that's what Facebook wants people to think that it is, then don't censor. It's as simple as that. Just don't censor. I'm of the opinion, and it's probably extreme, that you shouldn't censor Alex Jones, who I think is the craziest dude one of the craziest dudes I've ever heard. The QAnon conspiracy, absolutely nutcases. But Facebook shouldn't censor them because then it's becoming the arbiter of truth. You should let people watch it and let them decide, because they're smart enough to decide what they agree with and what they do not agree with.
And they can't become smart enough to decide if you don't give them that information.
Yeah, they're treating them like babies
who
who are not capable of making these decisions for themselves.
That's right.